everyone, and welcome to the Ultimate Job Search and Career Podcast. And this is the company's expert. Actually, you don't know who this is because you can't see my face. This could be your fairy godmother broadcasting from the moon, telling you how to get a job. Anyway, on today's episode, we're going to talk about employment credit checks. Can employers check your credit? Short answer, they can. And what do they use this information for, and what does it disclose? We're going to talk about that. Also, we're going to cover volunteer work on your resume. What should you fill out on your resume when talking about volunteer type activities, and what effect this has. And finally, we're going to talk about business clothing. So business attire, particularly for managers. If you want to look extra special, business-like and professional, what are some of the tips and tricks to get the clothing together? At least I'm going to give you my take on this. Okay. But first, I'd like to remind everybody that you can join my main channel as a member. You pay $5 a month or whatever, and you get extra videos. That's right, one extra video from me every week. You get a peek behind a curtain, and you get some more advanced topics that I don't cover in my regular channel videos. And also, you can look me up on Patreon if you're into that kind of thing, if you are into the whole Patreon thing. And if you support my channel, I put it all to making my channel better. Now, let's get on with it. So first up today, we're going to talk about credit checks. Now, I received a question from one of my awesome viewers / listeners. This is from Alpha Nash. Alpha Nash says, "Love your channel. Thank you for sharing your advice. I recently got an amazing job with a substantial pay increase, and I owe much of it to the wisdom you've shared." Well, thank you very much, Alpha Nash. I'm glad it's working out for you. One thing that caught me off guard, but fortunately wasn't a problem, was credit checking. I know that happens in the finance sector, but I work in tech, so I didn't know some employers look up your credit file and could turn you down for a role because of it, no matter how well you interviewed. Can you perhaps do a session and put a little light on this? Certainly I can. Thank you, Alpha Nash. That's excellent. This is something I haven't actually covered on my regular YouTube videos, to my knowledge, in the last 3 years. I still haven't gotten to this topic. Okay, so let's talk about credit checking. Yes, employers can look up your credit score. It's called a credit report. Now, I have to admit, I don't know all the nitty-gritty details because I personally have never checked the credit score of a candidate before I hired them. It was never a criteria of mine, but this is something that is done quite extensively for larger organizations, certainly, particularly if you're in the United States, and also some other countries like India. I know this is more of a standard practice. Now, because I'm covering sort of different countries in different industries, it's very hard to say things that are universally true for absolutely everyone in absolutely every situation. However, what I can tell you is that the vast majority of the time, what this looks like is there is an information system that allows companies to share financial information about their customers, okay? And that all goes to your credit report, okay? So if you're not familiar with this thing, if you don't know anything about it, basically it allows employers to look up your account, as it were, okay? And when they do, they see several things. First of all, they see a sort of shared financial history of you. So if you've ever borrowed money, or you currently are paying off borrowed money, like you're paying off debt, okay? This will show up in your credit report, okay? Now, if your score is not perfect, if there has been some blips in your history, like, for example, you've missed a payment or something like that, or you've reneged on some commitments to pay something back, and any of that kind of stuff, that will show up. And usually it gives you the specifics of it. So it doesn't just say bad credit. It says, like, specifically what was the violation and what company was it for, okay? So if you have borrowed money for a mortgage or for education, or for like car payments, or anything like that, personal line of credit, whatever it is, that will all show up in a credit report. And at the very top, it gives you a score. Okay, now I don't know enough about this to know if the score is universal for all countries in the world. I don't have that information, but I know in the United States, in Canada, where I am, and in a lot of other countries, they give you a sort of score at the top. And that's a lot of times the companies that care about this, that look this up, they may have criteria for the minimum allowed score, and depending on other things, like, for example, maximum amount of debt outstanding, things like this, okay? Now, let's just step back for a second, okay? This all sounds very scary. There's no reason to be scared by this. In some industries, they do this a lot more than others. For example, if you worked in real estate, I mean, this is the name of the game. They do this all the time to everybody, in working with people. Like, pretty much everyone they work with, they'll check their credit score first, okay? In other industries, this is not really done. This is just not a standard thing. Now, the other part about this is that large organizations, the ones that kind of really have a developed HR department where they are doing psychometrics, they're doing predictive behavior analysis, things like this, like some of the more, I don't want to call it advanced because I don't think it's very advanced. I think it's obsessive. But those type of organizations, larger organizations, they will do more of this, and they will read all kinds of meaning into your credit report, okay? They will say things like, for example, because you're carrying so much debt, that tends to make you unreliable. It tends to mean that, if we hire you, we suspect you might be looking for alternate and additional sources of income, so you could take bribes and things like this. If you're carrying a lot of debt, if you've had a lot of incidents of missed payments, that tends to say something about your character. At least that's what they will read into it. They'll say, well, you have a history of making commitments and reneging on your commitments, not honoring them. So we consider you a high risk type person. It's almost the equivalent of them finding that you've lied on your resume, something like that, and saying, well, because you're shown to be untrustworthy, we don't want to hire you. So they read all kinds of meaning into this, okay? Now, a lot of employers don't check credit history. It's just that simple because, quite frankly, there's kind of two issues with it. Number one, some of the assumptions that they make are not pinpoint accurate. They're data-based predictions. So, it isn't just companies being paranoid and stupid. It's actually based on evidence of how people have behaved under certain circumstances, okay? But, as we all know, just because, other people have done something doesn't mean that you're going to do it, right? And a lot of employers realize this, and so they don't read that deeply into it. All they check it for, a lot of employers, if they do check this, the only reason they check is to see if there's any major red flags, okay? The consensus is across many industries that, people are in debt, right? And especially younger people, if you've put yourself through university and things like this, depending on the circumstances, you're going to be in debt, and that's okay. That's not necessarily the end of the world. It's normal these days, certainly. And if you've missed a payment here or a payment there, or, whatever, there's been a misunderstanding here or something there, that's not the end of the world. They're not really going to pay too much attention to that, okay? What they are going to pay attention to is that if there's something really, really wrong with your credit history, okay, you have a history of borrowing money, not paying any of it back, and then skipping town, that's going to show up, okay? They're going to be able to tell stuff like that. If credit card companies or lenders or banks don't want to deal with you because of past incidents, betrayed trust and lying and all this, then that would show up, and they would use that in their assessment whether they're going to hire you. It's something else like reference checking. It's a part of the verification process. Okay, so for most people, this is really not going to impact them that much. Okay, you shouldn't be afraid of it. Okay, now the other thing I'd like to say about this is that something that everybody is fond of saying, and it's true, is that the hiring process is a two-way process, okay? Whether it feels like that or not, it is a two-way process. They are assessing you, but you are also assessing them, okay? It may not feel like that. It may feel like a master-slave relationship rather than, two people mutually deciding to have a business arrangement. But the reality is that you have free will and you can decide what employer you want to work for. And if the employer is behaving in an extremely unreasonable way, you may not want to pursue matters further with that employer. Okay, now, credit histories and credit checks definitely fall under that category. If you interviewed really well and you had a good rapport with the interviewer, maybe you're dealing with a hiring manager, you both get along as people, it just seems to click. You seem to be qualified for what they're looking for. You're interested in the job that they're essentially shopping to you, and everything looks good so far. Okay, if they were then to drop you from the running and not hire you because your credit score is a few points under a supposed hurdle rate or something, that's a red flag, actually. The bottom line is that for the employer-employee relationship, it is based on trust. You come to work, they trust that if they hire you, you will show up for your job, you will do your work and follow the rules, and in return, you trust that at the end of the pay period, they will pay you as per what was agreed. Right? There is trust involved. Now, some lower level jobs, it may not feel like that, but there is that certain level of trust. And this can kind of erode that in a big way, okay? If they're really looking at this and really judging you based on this, it could be a red flag that they are not the employer you want to work for. For example, there are cases where they will not just look at your credit score, they will ask you questions about your employment history that definitely fall under the umbrella of personal information. You shouldn't be expected to disclose certain things, right? If they're asking you all kinds of weird, suspicious questions, they're asking you, things that suggest that they're doing, let's say, advanced risk management. They're asking you things like, have you ever gone on disability? Have you ever put in a health and safety claim? Have you ever, gone to the hospital because of a work injury? Things like this. And if they're using all that information to assess you based on how risky you are in dollars and cents to the organization, then that might not be a good company to work for. Okay. Because obviously the trust isn't there. You need to have some trust in the job interview process, or it's going to be a bad experience for you, period. Okay. If you do get hired. So that's what I would say. So for Alpha Nash, thank you for sending this in. Yes, occasionally people will check your credit. As long as you don't have any major fraud or anything like that in your background, it shouldn't be anything to fear. Different organizations in different countries will have different rules of what they look for. Okay. But in the vast majority of cases, this is just to see that there isn't anything majorly wrong with you. Like you're blatantly lying and you're blatantly a fraud of some kind. Okay. So that's what this is about. As I say, I can't really help you with a lot of the nitty-gritty details because, as I say, I have never done credit checks on candidates. I don't believe that that's something that you need to do. Now, if you're going for like a sort of very security sensitive type job, okay, you're going to see you're going to have access to all kinds of intellectual property and other privileged information, and they want to check that there's no unreasonable liability with you as a candidate. They may go through this and they may go through it in more detail, and they'll pay more attention to it. Okay, so you can expect that if it's a sort of higher level privileged information type job, this will be looked at a lot closer, and they may have in my opinion, justifiable hurdles that you have to pass when it comes to your credit report. Okay. So that's basically all I'll say about this. Hopefully that makes sense. You might encounter this. There's nothing you have to do. Just, some people really, really get their back up about this entire concept of like them verifying something about you. I personally don't feel that way. That's just me. It's also symptomatic of the country I live in Canada. Not that many people are, really all up in arms about this, but I know in some other place in the world they kind of are. So I'm not going to get into that. It's more of a political thing, but that's how it impacts the hiring process. Okay. So thank you to Alpha Nash for sending that in. That's awesome. I have a lot of awesome people that write a lot of intelligent questions in the comments on a lot of my YouTube videos, including the videos for this podcast. So thank you very much for doing that. Okay. Now moving on, we have somebody else that has sent in a question. Okay. And this is from Gabriel. Okay. Gabriel does not include his full name, but just Gabriel. Okay. And says, "Dear company's expert, would it be wise for me to list altar service on my resume as volunteer work?" Okay. Altar service. So this is working in a church, I guess. I have additionally received an award for it and was wondering if that may be stated as an accomplishment. Yes, certainly. Certainly. Now, the fact that you're asking me this question, to me, that signals that you are in two minds about this. Now, I'm trying to think here why there would be any issue in listing this. Now, I'm going to make some assumptions here. Altar service, that's working in a church, and that would be in a Christian church. I don't know that for a fact, but that's my assumption. Now, if you are applying to a place where you suspect that they might have some bias against that kind of religious work or that kind of religious affiliation, then I think you're answering your own question by wondering about this. If you suspect that this may in some way count against you, then obviously you would want to leave it off. If you're applying for, I don't know, some organization where everybody is not Christian, okay, put it that way, and you suspect that they may be biased against you and not, this could do you more harm than good because of that connection, then I would leave it off. But just in general, there's certainly nothing wrong with listing anything under the volunteer section of your resume. And certainly doubly so if you have won an award for it. Okay, so this is perfectly fine. I would list this on your resume because it is an accomplishment, and volunteer work is good. Okay, the great thing about volunteer work is that, you might think that it's not as valuable because you're not making money doing it. It's not a job. People haven't employed you. You're basically doing something for free, right? But this is actually in many ways more valuable than paid work on your resume. Now, why do I say this? I say it because volunteer work, by its definition, it's disclosing work that you are passionate about. It is disclosing that you are passionate enough to do work that you're not getting paid for, okay? Now, this is tremendously useful because it signals to people what your true passions actually are, okay? For example, if you've done volunteer work in like a not-for-profit or in a charity, something like that, you're demonstrating that you enjoy that type of work and you are committed to that type of work. You're demonstrating it because nobody's paying you to do it. You're doing it of your own accord. And that's extremely powerful. That sends a very powerful signal to a hiring manager or a recruiter that this is what I really want to do, what I enjoy doing, and what I derive value from. Okay, so no matter what the volunteer work is, if you have volunteer work, I would highly recommend that you list it on your resume, okay? Not everybody looks at it, but some people do, and it can be very, very powerful for the reasons I've just listed. So definitely, there's absolutely nothing stopping you from doing this. And I don't really see a downside. The only downside I could ever see is if someone had you suspect they had a particular problem or bias against the thing that you are listing in your volunteer experience. Okay, so by all means do it. That's perfectly fine, Gabriel. Thanks for the question. Excellent. So that's volunteer work. And as I say, if you have any volunteer work, make sure you are listing it on your resume. It's good to include it in a section called volunteer work so that it's very upfront and obvious that this is volunteer stuff. Okay, even if it's not directly pertinent to the job that you are applying for. Okay, let's say you're not applying to a job to work in a church. You're applying for a completely unrelated job, and you're wondering, should you include this? Now, here's the deal. The one exception to this might be, I forget what you call it, but the software that filters resumes. I always forget the name of that stuff. That stuff is changing all the time. Their algorithms change all the time. It's a constant game of cat and mouse as people try and outmaneuver the software filters by doing things to their resumes and coming up with new formats and new essentially hacks. And one of the things in conventional wisdom says, you shouldn't have any things on your resume that, have nothing to do whatsoever with your job you're applying for. Okay. So that's an element to this. However, the problem there is that, you're trying to guess what a computer algorithm is. Now, when I'm talking about doing your resume, I'm talking about doing your resume in such a way that a human's going to read it. Okay. And I don't really advocate going down the rabbit hole of trying to outmaneuver the applicant tracking software. Okay. ATS, applicant tracking software. That's the word I was searching for before. So, if you're worried about that, if that's the reason you're asking, should you include this? I would still say yes. Okay. I would still say yes, because if it gets past the applicant tracking software, it's then going to be read by a human. And at that point, they're going to be looking for reasons to hire you. And this would be a hell of a shame to leave that off your resume and not be able to play this card of volunteer work. Okay. That's the reasoning behind it. So even if you're worried about application tracking software, I still wouldn't leave the volunteer work off the resume. Okay. That's just my 2 cents. I don't believe that bowing to applicant tracking system is a legitimate strategy to get a job. It just isn't. That the vast majority of people that get a job, over 50% of people that get a job, get it through networking anyway. So you're not even dealing with any of that. And then of the people that don't do networking, a fraction of them go through standard channels, including sending in a job application that goes through applicant tracking system. So I would not tailor your resume to bow to algorithms and applicant tracking software. I'm not saying it never works, but your odds of that being successful are really not that good. Okay, so put it on. Okay, moving on. And thanks to Gabriel for sending that in. Thanks to everybody who sends in questions and intelligent questions. You guys are really awesome. I appreciate you listening to my podcast. I appreciate you watching my videos, and I appreciate you sending me your questions. It's great. Okay, just a reminder that I have a couple of courses very briefly. And if you really want to get the lowdown on how to get hired, I have a course called Get Hired. There's a link to it in the description box of this video. So check that out. I also have several videos on my channel that walk you through exactly what the course is all about, what you learn, how it works, and that sort of thing, so you can be informed before you buy it, if that's the direction you're going. Okay, but check that out if you're kind of lost and you're not having a lot of luck in getting hired and it's been a while. I may be able to help you with that in my course. Also, if you are looking to learn business, either you want to start your own company or you want to enhance your abilities as a supervisor, as a manager, or as a professional, consider checking out my other course called the $100 MBA. There is a link to that course in the description box of this video. Incredible value for money. It's a non-accredited MBA, but basically you learn everything you would learn in a regular MBA at a university, and except that you are reading the textbooks on your own. So you get to do it at your own pace, on your own schedule, and to the depth of which you are interested in the material. So if that's something that you're into, and I'm your guide throughout the whole process. I have an MBA myself. I've been the CEO of a smaller company, and I've been in business for 30 years. And I've helped entrepreneurs, and I've started companies. So, and I've led companies to success. So I share some of my insights in that. So if that's any interest to you, check out the link in the description. Okay, so the third and final topic we're going to talk about today is clothing, right? Attire is the fancy word for it. Business attire. If you are looking to get a job that's at the management level, maybe you've been a worker for many years, maybe a supervisor, but now you want to actually move up into the manager type job, okay? A couple of levels up the ladder. And depending on what industry you're in, you might want to look professional. You want to look like the real deal, okay? Let's talk about clothes. Now, first off, the first kind of tip I have for anyone here, okay, is something called a Thompson tee. I don't know if you ever heard of this. Thompson tee, THOMPSON, Thompson tee, TEE. It's a t-shirt, okay, and it's an undershirt, and they make these for men and women, and I've been wearing these things for, I don't know, very long time, many, many years. And what it does is it's got these absorbent pads under the armpits so that if you're nervous, if you're sweating, you don't get ugly sweat stains on your shirt. So what this means is that if you're like for many years, I was doing meetings, I've done keynotes, and I've taught classes in university and college. And what you can do is you can walk around and you'd be just wearing a dress shirt with an undershirt underneath, the Thompson tee. And you can be, it could be very, very hot in the room that you're in. And so you might be sweating, but you can still raise your arms and not have any sweat stains under your armpits or on your back or your chest or anything like that. Incredible kind of article of clothing. I highly recommend it. Check it out. Thompson tee. I'm in no way affiliated with them. I don't make any money off recommending this. It's something that's helped me for many, many years. It's helped many people. I've always, I remember when I went back to university a few years ago to do some teaching. I'm not an academic. I'm a guy from the private sector, but I went back into academia to do some teaching, teaching business and HR and in the local university where I am in Winnipeg, Canada. And, I was teaching students, and some of the students clearly hadn't taken advantage or were not aware of little tips like this. So you get people with big sweat stains and stuff like that. And it's like, yeah, that's kind of, starting off in your early 20s, but you pick up these tips. So check that out, Thompson tee. And many people have done YouTube videos and things, and I'm sure there's a lot of stuff on the internet about it. So check them out. This can make you feel more comfortable. You feel less self-conscious, and you come across a lot more professional. Okay, so Thompson tee. Another thing, the tie. Now, there's a lot of progressive companies out there, and there's been a lot of progressive companies out there for about the last 50 years. Trying to portray this image of, we're not stuffy suits. We're kind of young and hip. We sit on bean bags and we wear sweatpants and t-shirts to the office, and for all their talk, the bottom line is that if you want to look professional, you still have to dress up. It's just that simple. When was the last time you went to a bank and the bank manager showed up in a white vest and sweatpants? I'd be willing to venture not very often. There's a reason for that. They're always dressed to the nines. They've always got the suit, the tie, right? Very professional grooming, right? Usually you're not allowed to have the 4-inch mutton chops if you're a guy. You're not allowed to have the mini skirt if you're a girl. there's a reason why people dress up like this. It may not be apparent to people in their 20s. It certainly wasn't apparent to me, but I learned pretty quick. Once I hit 30, there's a reason why. So for those of you who are there, great. For those of you who haven't quite realized that, yeah, that's fine. But if you want to become a manager, you want to move up the ladder, especially in a larger organization, but this is pretty much universal, you have to look the part, okay? It's only extremely rare exceptions, like hotshot celebrity billionaires that can break this mold. And that's because it doesn't matter what they show up wearing. We still appreciate them for their business skills, right? If you're Steve Jobs or Bill Gates or Elon Musk, you can maybe get away with this, but we all know how often that happens. So you got to dress up. And one of the things that people do when they dress up, especially for men, is you have to wear a tie. Now, ties can be very cheap. You can buy them everywhere. You can buy them from the local mall. You could order them online. You can, ties are interesting because you can get them for $2, but yet some people pay $500 for a tie. Now, what's the difference? Well, there's all kinds of fancy differences if you want to really get down into the details. But for most people, the only thing that you really notice is the color. And one thing that may not be obvious is that if you want to really look professional, stay away from bright colors. Okay, if you want to say a red tie, okay, don't get the candy apple primary color Fisher-Price red. Get this subdued burgundy, kind of crimson, understated tie. That actually looks much more professional. It's not obvious, at least not for some people, but that's how that works. So if you're going to get a tie, make sure you get a subdued, non-primary color tie. Okay. If you're going for the professional look, okay, you want to look like some high-profile lawyer, high-profile banker. Okay, you want to look like the CFO. You go with the tie that's subdued. Okay, it doesn't have to be black, but it has to be a darker color. Okay, no primary colors, no canary yellow. Okay, if you're a guy, it works different for ladies. Okay, you can get away with different colors for ladies when you have like a pantsuit or a regular suit. There's other kind of rules there, but for guys, okay, subdued color. And when it comes to the suit itself, the darker the color, generally the more professional. Okay, that's kind of how that works, right? That's the very general rule. So if you want to wear a sort of black suit or very dark blue, that's fine. If you're going to wear a sort of khaki or white suit, if you can afford that, if you're the type of person that has a white suit. I don't have a white suit, but the incredible ice cream suit, you will not see any of my videos with me wearing that. Not yet, anyway. But yeah, that's kind of the general rule. So the darker the suit and the darker the tie, okay, and the more subdued the color, the more professional. Okay, stripes are good on the shirt. Okay, you can get big stripes, you can get small stripes, but on the suit, stay away from really big stripes. The whole pinstripe thing is not really in anymore. It hasn't been in since about 1935. So just some general wardrobe tips with Bill. And shirt, you can buy a shirt at any store. You can buy them on the internet, but there is still a difference, in my opinion, with a regular shirt you buy off the rack and a bespoke shirt that you get custom. You can go to a tailor and get a bespoke shirt, and it doesn't actually break the bank. This is the good news. Okay, if you're getting a bespoke suit, that can be quite pricey, but bespoke shirts are a really good investment. You will look professional. You will look comfortable in your clothes. It will just look really, really good. So I'd highly recommend that you check that out. And I'm not talking about going to sort of the local shirt and suit warehouse. I'm talking about an actual tailor who's going to measure every single kind of measurement and multiple measurements and make you a shirt that's tailored for you. Even if you only have a couple of these, they can be really, really useful, especially if you only wear them for special occasions like your job interview. You want to look like $1 million. This will help you do it. Okay. So yeah. And then also getting a tailor, going to a tailor can be very, very useful. As I said, if you're getting an entire suit tailored, that might not be super affordable for everybody. But just getting shirts and things like that can be very, very advantageous. It might be worth the money. So check it out. So that's what I'll have to say about attire. I'm not a big expert in this stuff. I'm not a clothing expert, but these are some tips that I've picked up over the years and I'd like to pass on to you. However, there's one last tip I'll say, and you might have seen this from some of my earlier videos, is it's funny because if you look at how CEOs dress, and I'm not talking about like, sort of tech startups where like the founder is the CEO. I'm talking about actual CEOs, and you look at their ties. Occasionally you'll see a CEO with a really loud, bright tie. And I think they do it because they can, but it does look really cool. If you get, say, an apple green tie, that can look actually very, very professional. A white shirt and an apple green tie. So just my opinion, and I'm sure people are going to give me an argument on pretty much every point I mentioned, but that's my 2 cents. If you're going for a management type job or an executive type job, it is worth looking the part, okay? Because then really you're in the situation where if you look like the candidate, all you have to do is not talk yourself out of a job. If you walk in there and you don't look like the candidate, you've got a much tougher sell. You now have to change everybody's mind about you, and that's a much bigger challenge, okay? So getting the look right, getting the grooming right, that's very important, okay? It shouldn't be important, but it is. And that's the world we live in, unfortunately. So hopefully that helps. So thank you to everybody who's listening in. You guys are awesome. I do appreciate you. I think you're great. And I appreciate all the questions I've been getting. So if you have any questions, don't hesitate. Let me know. And if I can answer them quickly, I will. If I can't answer them quickly in the comments, I may pick them to talk about on the podcast. So thank you very much. I hope you guys have a great week, and I will see you on the next episode. Take care.